Chapter 5 of The Dog Crusoe and His Master. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Allison Hester of Athens, Georgia. The Dog Crusoe and His Master by R. M. Ballantyne. Chapter 5. A Mission of Peace. Unexpected Joys. Dick and Crusoe set off for the land of the Redskins, and meet with adventures by the way, as a matter of course. Night in the wild woods. One day the inhabitants of Mustang Valley were thrown into considerable excitement by the arrival of an officer of the United States Army and a small escort of cavalry. They went direct to the blockhouse, which, since Major Hope's departure, had become the residence of Joe Blunt, that worthy having, by general consent, been deemed the fittest man in the settlement to fill the major's place. Soon it began to be noised abroad that the strangers had been sent by government to endeavor to bring about, if possible, a more friendly state of feeling between the whites and the Indians, by means of presents, and promises, and fair speeches. The party remained all night in the blockhouse, and ere long it was reported that Joe Blunt had been requested, and had consented to be the leader and chief of a party of 3 men who should visit the neighboring tribes of Indians to the west and north of the valley as government agents. Joe's knowledge of 2 or 3 different Indian dialects, and his well-known sagacity, rendered him a most fitting messenger on such an errand. It was also whispered that Joe was to have the choosing of his comrades in this mission, and many were the opinions expressed and guesses made as to who would be chosen. That same evening Dick Varley was sitting in his mother's kitchen cleaning his rifle. His mother was preparing supper and talking quietly about the obstinacy of a particular hen that had taken to laying her eggs in places where they could not be found. Fan was coiled up in a corner sound asleep, and Crusoe was sitting at one side of the fire looking on at things in general. "I wonder," remarked Mrs. Varley, as she spread the table with a pure white napkin, "I wonder what the sodgers are doing with Joe Blunt." As often happens when an individual is mentioned, the worthy referred to opened the door at that moment and stepped into the room. "Good eatin', dame," said the stout hunter, doffing his cap and resting his rifle in a corner, while Dick rose and placed a chair for him. "The same to you, Master Blunt," answered the widow. "You've just comed in good time for a cut of venison." "Thanks, mistress. I suppose we beholden to the silver rifle for that." "To the hand that aimed it, rather," suggested the widow. "Nay, then, say rayther to the dog that turned it," said Dick Varley. "But for Crusoe, that buck would have been couched in the woods this night." "Oh, if it comes to that," retorted Joe, "I'd lay it to the door of Fan, for she'd niver been born, nuther would Crusoe. But it's good and tender meat, whatever ways you got it. Howsever, I've other things to talk about just now. Them sodgers that are eating buffalo tongues up at the blockhouse as if they'd niver eat meat before, and didn't hope to eat again for 12 months." "Ay, what of them?" interrupted Miss Varley. "I've been wondering what was their errand." "Of course you was, Dame Varley, and I've comed here a purpose to tell ye. They want me to go to the Redskins to make peace between them and us. And they've brought us a lot of goods to make them presents withal, beads and knives and looking glasses and vermilion paint, and sic like, just as much as'll be a light load for one horse. For you see, nothing can be done with the Redskins without gifts." "'Tis a blessed mission," said the widow. "I wish it may succeed. Do you think you'll go?" "Go? Ay, that I will." "I only wish they'd made the offer to me," said Dick with a sigh. "And so they do make the offer, lad. They've gi'n me leave to choose 2 men I'm to take with me, and I've come straight to ask you. I know, for we must be up and away by break o' day to-morrow." Mrs. Varley started. "So soon?" she said, with a look of anxiety. Hi, the ponies are at the Yellow Creek just at this time, but I've heerd they're about to break up camp and away west, so we'll need to use haste." "May I go, mother?" asked Dick, with a look of anxiety. There was evidently a conflict in the widow's breast, but it quickly ceased. "Yes, my boy," she said, in her own low, quiet voice, "and God go with ye. I know the time must come soon, and I thank him that your first visit to the redskins will be on errand o' peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Dick grasped his mother's hand and pressed it to his cheek in silence. At that same moment Crusoe, seeing the deeper feelings of his master were touched, and deeming it his duty to sympathize, rose up and thrust his nose against him. "Ah, pup!" cried the young man hastily. "You must go too. Of course Crusoe goes, Joe Blunt." "Humph! I don't know that. There's no depending on a dog to keep his tongue quiet in times of danger." "Believe me," exclaimed Dick, flashing with enthusiasm, "Crusoe's more trustworthy than I am meself. If ye can trust the master, you're safe to trust the pup." "Well, lad, you may be right. We'll take him." "Thanks, Joe. And who else goes with us?" "I've been casting that in my mind for some time, and I fixed to take Henry. He's not the safest man in the valley, but he's the truest. That's a fact. And now, younker, get your horse and rifle ready, and come to the blockhouse at daybreak tomorrow. Good luck to you, mistress, till we meet again." Joe Blunt rose, and taking up his rifle, without which he scarcely ever moved a foot from his own door, left the cottage with rapid strides. "My son," said Mrs Varley, kissing Dick's cheek as he resumed his seat, "put this in the little pocket I made for you in your hunting shirt." She handed him a small pocket Bible. "Dear mother," he said, as he placed the book carefully within the breast of his coat, "the redskin that takes that from me must take my scalp first. But don't fear for me. You've often said the Lord would protect me, so he will, mother, for sure. It's an errand o' peace." "Ay, that's it," murmured the widow in a half soliloquy. Dick Varley spent that night in converse with his mother, and next morning at daybreak he was at the place of meeting mounted on his sturdy little horse, with the silver rifle on his shoulder and Crusoe by his side. "That's right, lad, that's right. Nothing like keeping your time," said Joe, as he led out a pack horse from the gate of the blockhouse, while his own charger was held ready, saddled by a man named Daniel Brand, who had been appointed to the charge of the blockhouse in his absence. "Where's Henry? Oh, here he comes!" exclaimed Dick, as the hunter referred to came thundering up the slope at a charge, on a horse that resembled its rider in size, and not a little in clumsiness of appearance. "Ah, mes boys, him's a goot one to go," cried Henry, remarking Dick's smile as he pulled up. "No hoss on the plain can beat dis one, sir, Now then, Henry, lend a hand to fix this pack. We've no time to palaver." By this time they were joined by several of the soldiers and a few hunters who had come to see them start. "Remember, Joe," cried one, "if you don't come back in 3 months, we'll all come out in a band to seek you." "If we don't come back in less than that time, what's left of us won't be worth seeking for," said Joe, tightening the girth of his saddle. "Put a bit in your own mouth, Henry," cried another, as the Canadian arranged his steed's bridle. "You'll need it more than your horse when you get among the red reptiles." "Rammit, if mon mott needs one bit, yours will need a padlock." "Now, lads, mount," cried Joe Blunt, as he vaulted into the saddle. Dick Varley sprang lightly on his horse, and Henry made a rush at his steed and hurled his huge frame across its back with a violence that ought to have brought it to the ground, but the tall, raw-boned, broad-chested roan was accustomed to the eccentricities of his master, and stood the shock bravely. Being appointed to lead the pack horse, Henry seized its halter, and then the 3 cavaliers shook their reins, and waving their hands to their comrades, they sprang into the woods at full gallop, and laid their course for the far west. For some time they galloped side by side in silence.